Have you ever noticed how something as small as a spice jar can hold the power to change your life? You sprinkle a little on your soup, stir a pinch into your tea, and never think twice. But what if those same little powders and leaves sitting quietly in your kitchen cabinet were silently guarding your kidneys? The very organs that keep your body's inner rivers clean? Most of us don't think much about kidneys until trouble strikes. A routine blood test comes back with words like high creatinine or reduced kidney function, and suddenly what was hidden becomes urgent. For many of my patients, this realization feels like standing on a cliff's edge, scared of falling, unsure what's next. I'm Dr. Brian, and welcome to Channel Vital Science for Seniors. Today, I want to open that spice jar with you and reveal 7 humble ingredients that may just help protect your kidneys and restore your hope. When I think of turmeric, I often picture a patient of mine named Evelyn. She was in her early 70s, a retired teacher who loved to cook, but had been told to watch her blood pressure and kidney health. Evelyn had come to me with rising creatinine levels, and she felt frightened, as if her own body was turning against her. I remember sitting across from her and gently explaining that the golden powder she'd used for decades in her curry might be more powerful than she realized. Turmeric's strength comes from a compound called curcumin. You don't need to remember the chemistry, but think of it like a shield for your kidneys. Every day, our kidneys face tiny sparks of damage, little bursts of stress from high blood pressure, toxins, or even sugar circulating in the blood. Left unchecked, these sparks can scar kidney tissue, like rust slowly creeping across iron. Curcumin acts like a fire blanket, smothering those sparks before they grow into flames. That's what doctors mean when they talk about anti-inflammatory and antioxidant effects. It's really about calming the fires before they consume the house. Science backs this up. A clinical trial published in the Journal of Renal Nutrition found that patients with chronic kidney disease who took curcumin showed a significant reduction in albuminuria, which is the leakage of protein into the urine, a clear sign of kidney damage. In simpler terms, turmeric wasn't just soothing inflammation, it was protecting the delicate filter system of the kidneys themselves. Now, Evelyn didn't start swallowing spoonfuls of turmeric. I advised her to think small and steady. A half teaspoon stirred into warm milk at night, a sprinkle over vegetables, even a pinch in her morning smoothie. She liked the ritual. It felt like caring for herself in a gentle, nourishing way. Within months, her blood pressure steadied, and while her kidneys weren't magically cured, her labs improved enough that she felt hope again. She told me, "Dr. Brian, every sip of that golden milk feels like I'm giving my kidneys a hug." Of course, I also warned her, and I'll warn you now, too much of a good thing can cause trouble. Large amounts of turmeric can upset your stomach or thin your blood. The sweet spot is modest, a teaspoon in food or about 500 milligrams in supplement form, unless your doctor tells you otherwise. In the end, what matters most is the rhythm of consistent care, not the size of the dose. Turmeric is proof that healing often begins not with the latest drug or technology, but with a spice that has been sitting in kitchens for centuries, waiting quietly to be rediscovered. A few winters ago, a gentleman named Harold came into my clinic. He was 68, a retired mechanic with hands that still carried the memory of grease and tools. Harold wasn't one to complain, but his wife insisted on the visit because he'd been feeling puffy around his ankles and tired most of the day. His labs showed his kidneys were under strain, and his blood pressure wasn't behaving. As we talked, I noticed his thermos. He smiled sheepishly and told me it was filled with hot ginger tea, something his grandmother had made for him whenever he was ill as a child. That small detail brought me joy, because ginger is more than a warming spice. It's a gentle ally for your kidneys. Think of your kidneys as housekeepers working day and night, sweeping out excess salt, waste, and toxins. Sometimes they get bogged down, like brooms clogged with dust. Ginger acts like a fresh breeze through the system. It's a natural diuretic, which means it helps the kidneys flush out sodium and extra fluid. For someone like Harold, who was holding on to water in his ankles, that simple tea was already lending a hand. But ginger's talents don't end there. Within its knobby roots are compounds like gingerol and shogal, names that sound complicated, but their job is simple. They quiet the chaos caused by free radicals, those unstable molecules that crash into healthy kidney cells like reckless drivers. By calming oxidative stress and easing inflammation, Ginger gives the kidneys a chance to catch their breath and repair. And here's something important. Ginger also helps with blood sugar control. Since diabetes is the #1 cause of kidney disease, this is no small gift. By improving the way the body responds to insulin, ginger helps prevent the sugar overload that can wear out those tiny kidney filters. Harold's story turned into a kind of homecoming. Instead of new medications right away, we worked ginger into his daily rhythm more intentionally. He drank his tea twice a day, grated fresh ginger into stir-fries, even added thin slices into smoothies. Over time, his swelling reduced, his blood pressure steadied, and he felt lighter. He told me once, "It's like my body is less burdened, like someone turned on a valve to release the pressure." Now let me be clear, ginger isn't magic. Too much of it can irritate your stomach or even thin your blood if you're on certain medications. A teaspoon of fresh ginger or a cup or two of ginger tea daily is usually enough for most people. But what Harold's story shows us is that nature has been whispering solutions all along. Sometimes the answer isn't in the pharmacy down the street, but in a root that your grandmother may have already trusted. When you sip ginger tea, you're not just enjoying a warm drink. You're giving your kidneys the gift of a fresh start, a chance to sweep clean and keep you standing strong. There's a patient who always comes to mind when I think about cinnamon. Her name is Lorraine. She was 72, a retired choir singer, with a laugh that filled my office. But beneath that laugh was a quiet fear. Lorraine had been managing type 2 diabetes for over a decade, and recently her doctor told her that her kidneys were feeling the strain. She confessed to me, "Dr. Brian, I don't want to end up on dialysis. I want to keep singing with my grandkids at church." Her words carried both hope and fear, and I knew exactly what she meant. For people with diabetes, blood sugar is like a river that keeps running too high and too fast. Over time, that fast river scours the banks, eroding the delicate kidney filters. Cinnamon, that sweet and warming spice often sprinkled on oatmeal or slipped into tea, has an almost poetic role here. It slows the river down. Compounds inside cinnamon help the body become more sensitive to insulin, which means sugar moves more smoothly from the blood into the cells where it belongs. The effect is subtle but steady, and for kidneys, that steadying can mean everything. There's science behind this too. A study published in Diabetes Care showed that people with type 2 diabetes who consume cinnamon daily experienced reductions in fasting blood sugar and improvements in cholesterol. While the researchers weren't specifically looking at kidney outcomes, the connection is clear. Calmer blood sugar equals less stress on the kidneys. I explained it to Lorraine this way. Imagine your kidneys are fine silk sieves. If you keep pouring thick syrup through them, they clog and tear. But if you thin that syrup into something closer to water, the sieve can keep working gracefully. Cinnamon helps with that thinning. Lorraine decided to embrace cinnamon not as medicine, but as a daily comfort. She stirred it into her morning oatmeal, steeped it in her herbal tea, and even added a sprinkle over baked apples for dessert. She chose Ceylon cinnamon, the true variety, because it has less coumarin, a natural compound that in high amounts can actually harm the liver and kidneys. After a few months, her blood sugar stabilized more consistently, her creatinine levels stopped climbing, and she beamed when she told me she felt safe enough to keep singing. I always remind people that cinnamon is powerful, but moderation matters. About a teaspoon a day is plenty. Too much, especially of the common cassia cinnamon, can backfire. And if you're on blood thinners, you'll want to check with your doctor before adding it regularly. But for most, it's a simple, delicious way to nurture not just the body, but the spirit too. Cinnamon taught Lorraine that health can be both science and song. Every sprinkle was a note of protection, each cup of tea a verse in her commitment to staying well enough to sing with joy. And that's the beauty of it. Small daily choices can echo louder than fear. There's a certain fragrance that carries memories with it, and for me, that fragrance is cardamom. I once had a patient, Sarah, who was 65 and originally from India. She would bring homemade chai to her appointments, the kind brewed slowly with black tea, milk, and those little green pods of cardamom crushed just enough to release their aroma. She told me she'd grown up with it, but only later in life did she discover how those tiny pods were quietly helping her kidneys. Cardamom is often called the queen of spices, and for good reason. Inside its delicate shell are oils that act like a gentle broom for the kidneys. One of its gifts is working as a natural diuretic, helping the body let go of excess water, toxins, and salts. For kidneys that are constantly straining under the burden of modern diets and high blood pressure, this is a relief. Imagine a crowded hallway suddenly cleared, space opens, and everything moves more easily. That's what cardamom does for your body's inner traffic. Syra's story showed me the practical side of this. She had struggled with fluid retention, feeling heavy and sluggish, her ankles swollen by evening. After her doctor suggested reducing sodium, she also leaned into her cultural wisdom, adding cardamom tea into her daily rhythm. Within weeks, she felt lighter, her swelling reduced, and her blood pressure began to fall into healthier ranges. It wasn't magic, it was consistency. Each cup of chai was another small step toward freedom. Science, too, affirms what tradition has long known. Studies have suggested that cardamom can help lower blood pressure, thanks to its antioxidant and anti-inflammatory compounds. For kidneys, this matters deeply because high blood pressure is one of the main villains that erode their delicate blood vessels. Think of those vessels as garden hoses. Too much pressure day after day and tiny cracks appear. Cardamom acts like a pressure regulator, easing the strain and giving those hoses a chance to last longer. Syra often joked that her medicine came in the form of a teacup. She would toss a few pods into her pot, crushing them lightly to unlock their flavor. She added them to rice, curries, even the occasional batch of cookies. It wasn't hard, it was joyful. That's the secret I love most about spices. They invite healing into the ordinary rituals of daily life. Still, as I reminded her, cardamom isn't meant to be swallowed by the handful. Half to 1 teaspoon of the ground spice or a few pods in your tea each day is enough. Too much can cause bloating or digestive discomfort, and if you're pregnant or managing a medical condition, it's always wise to check with your healthcare provider. Cardamom teaches us that healing doesn't have to be bitter. Sometimes it's sweet, fragrant, and comforting, woven into the traditions we already cherish. And for your kidneys, every small fragrant step counts toward a healthier, freer tomorrow. A few summers ago, I met Richard, a 70-year-old gardener who came to me after a painful episode with kidney stones. He was a strong man, the kind who had spent a lifetime working with his hands. But when he spoke of the stone he passed, he winced as though the memory itself hurt. His wife leaned in during our conversation and said, "Doctor, he's always chewing on fresh mint leaves while working in the garden. Could that be helping him?" She didn't know how right she was. Mint is often dismissed as nothing more than a garnish, a green sprig tossed on top of desserts or stirred into lemonade. But beneath its cooling taste lies a remarkable gift for the kidneys. Mint contains natural compounds that act like little helpers, supporting the body as it clears out waste. Picture your kidneys as diligent workers in a hot, noisy factory. Mint is like a breeze blowing through the doors, easing the burden and refreshing the air so those workers can keep going. For Richard, this made sense. His kidneys, strained from years of high-sodium foods and dehydration, needed all the help they could get. Mint encouraged bile production, which improved digestion and gave his kidneys less waste to struggle with. Its cooling effect also soothed the discomfort from urinary tract irritation, a common companion to kidney stones. When he brewed mint tea in the evenings, he wasn't just enjoying a calming ritual, he was quietly protecting his body from another painful ordeal. Research is beginning to catch up with what tradition has long known. Mint's essential oils show antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory effects, both of which matter for kidney health. By reducing inflammation and helping prevent infections in the urinary tract, mint makes the job of filtering easier and safer. Think of it as oiling the gears of a machine that runs nonstop. Smoother gears last longer, but as with all natural remedies, moderation matters. I encourage Richard to stick with 5 to 10 fresh leaves a day or 1 to 2 cups of mint tea. More than that could upset his stomach or even cause allergic reactions in sensitive people. He laughed and said, "Doctor, I think I'd have to plant a whole new garden to eat that much." His wife smiled, relieved that something so simple could make such a difference. For Richard, mint became more than a garnish. It was a daily reminder that healing often comes in refreshing, humble forms. Each sip of his tea, each leaf chewed in the garden, was a small act of protection, keeping his kidneys steady while allowing him to continue tending to the plants he loved. Mint showed him and shows us that even the smallest leaf can cool the fiercest fire. When Maria, a 68-year-old grandmother, came to see me, she was worried. Her doctor had told her that her creatinine was creeping upward, and the word diet for kidney disease had suddenly become part of her vocabulary. She felt overwhelmed, afraid that she would lose her independence. But as we talked through gentle changes she could make, she smiled and said, "Doctor, I've been cooking with cumin my whole life. Could that help me protect my kidneys?" Her question was wise because cumin is more than just flavor. It's medicine disguised as spice. Cumin seeds carry a warmth that goes beyond taste. They contain compounds that reduce inflammation and help digestion run smoothly. Why does this matter for kidneys? Because when the gut processes food efficiently, there's less metabolic waste for the kidneys to struggle with. It's like running a household where everyone cleans up after themselves. There's less strain on the person stuck doing the dishes. For the kidneys, every bit of reduced workload is a gift. Maria began sprinkling cumin more intentionally into her meals. Soups, roasted vegetables, even her morning eggs. Within months, she noticed her digestion was calmer and her energy steadier. More importantly, her lab work showed stability, a small but meaningful victory. "It feels," she told me, "like I'm seasoning my way back to health." Cumin also acts as a natural diuretic, encouraging the release of excess fluid and helping flush out toxins. For someone at risk of kidney stones or fluid retention, this is a quiet but powerful ally. And research has shown cumin's antioxidants work to shield delicate kidney tissue from the microscopic stress of high blood sugar. That's particularly important for seniors managing diabetes, since unchecked sugar is one of the main villains in kidney damage. But as with every spice, there's balance to be struck. I caution Maria not to go overboard. Half a teaspoon to a teaspoon a day is plenty. Too much can lead to bloating or heartburn, and pregnant women should avoid large doses. She nodded thoughtfully and said, "So the secret isn't piling it on, it's weaving it in." Exactly. Healing isn't about extremes. It's about rhythms, consistency, and respect for your body's limits. Cumin reminds us that even the most ordinary pantry item can hold extraordinary power. For Maria, each pinch became more than flavor. It was a promise to herself that she could still take charge of her health. For your kidneys, cumin is a steady friend, clearing the path so they can keep working with less strain. I'll never forget Mr. Thompson, a retired teacher in his 70s, who came into my office carrying a small pot of fresh basil. He smiled and said, "Doctor, I brought you this because my wife swears it's been keeping me out of trouble." He wasn't talking about mischief. He meant kidney trouble. He had a history of kidney stones and borderline diabetes, and his wife had filled their kitchen with basil plants, insisting he add fresh leaves to salads, teas, and even soups. What struck me was not just the fragrance of that pot he handed me, but the quiet hope in his eyes. Basil is one of nature's gentle protectors. Its leaves are rich in antioxidants, antibacterial compounds, and natural anti-inflammatories. For kidneys that are constantly exposed to oxidative stress, tiny sparks of damage from high blood sugar, high blood pressure, or toxin buildup, basil is like a shield. It doesn't stop life's battles, but it softens the blows. Research has shown basil can help regulate blood sugar, and for someone like Mr. Thompson, that meant less strain on the kidney's fragile filters. But basil's gifts don't stop there. It's also a natural diuretic, encouraging the body to release excess fluid and flushing out waste before it can harden into stones. For those prone to kidney stones, basil's compounds can help prevent their formation and ease their passage if they do occur. Mr. Thompson told me how he had passed a small stone months earlier, and while it was uncomfortable, his recovery was quicker than in the past. He credited his wife's basil tea ritual, a warm, soothing cup each evening, brewed with fresh leaves. To me, basil represents healing that feels both sacred and simple. It grows easily, often right in a kitchen window or garden pot, and it asks little but gives much. A few fresh leaves torn into a salad, blended into a smoothie, or steeped in hot water is enough. 1 to 2 tablespoons of fresh leaves a day, or half a teaspoon if dried, is all your body needs to benefit. Of course, I reminded Mr. Thompson that too much basil can cause digestive upset, and those on blood thinners should be cautious. He laughed, pointing at his wife, and said, "She'd never let me overdo it anyway." That moment captured something I wish every patient understood. Healing is often about partnership, with your loved ones, with your food, with your own body. When I see basil, I don't just see a spice or herb. I see a green reminder that health doesn't always come from pills or hospitals. Sometimes it's grown in a small pot by the kitchen window, waiting to be torn fresh and sprinkled over dinner. For your kidneys, basil is not just flavor. It's a daily act of gentle protection, another way to reclaim vitality one meal at a time. As we come to the end of this journey together, I want you to pause and think about the small green bottles or fresh herbs sitting quietly in your kitchen. Turmeric, ginger, cinnamon, cardamom, mint, cumin, basil. Each of them carries a story of healing, each of them a chance to protect the kidneys that work so tirelessly for you every day. It doesn't take grand gestures or complicated regimens. Sometimes it's as simple as sprinkling spice over your soup, stirring herbs into your tea, or chewing a fresh leaf in the garden.